ANC will hold the much anticipated political induction of its over 80 members of its National Executive Committee at the Esselen Park Conference Centre east of Johannesburg today. This comes ahead of the two-day ordinary sitting of its NEC meeting starting tomorrow. The first NEC Lekgotla will follow on Sunday and Monday. But for more on this, let's speak now to SABC News reporter Samkele Maseko. Samkele, a good morning to you. Tell us what you've seen out there this morning.
Yeah, that's what they've made requests already, so I need to just...
The president of the ANC, Cyril Ramaphosa, and all other ANC NEC members and ex-officio members of the NEC have arrived for this NEC meeting. But there's also an interesting person of interest who has arrived at this NEC meeting. I just need to get the proper title correctly, which is the Secretary Janet Yellen, U.S. Treasury, who has arrived here as well at the Esselen Park, where President Cyril Ramaphosa is expected to have a bilateral session with Secretary Janet Yellen here at the ANC's NEC meeting on the sidelines. We are anticipating to try and get those visuals of the Secretary of Treasury in the United States of America with President Cyril Ramaphosa, but we are with Mr. Pulemabe, the spokesperson of the ANC, to further expand on the program of the day.
Thanks, members of the media. I must apologize. Earlier on, newsroom had wanted to talk to us on the program, but we wanted to just brief all of you on our program and how it will be unfolding today. So we did issue an alert yesterday indicating to yourselves that there will be a series of NEC meetings that we are going to have, which starts today up until Monday. So today we start with the NEC induction. The Secretary General this morning was presenting the roll call, which talks to who is present in the meeting, those that are absent, those that are indicated arriving late, and all of that. That is what we were seized with this morning. So we are expected to get opening remarks from the President, who has already arrived for the meeting. Then we'll get the objectives of the NEC induction, which will be done by the O.R. Tambo School Board Chairperson, Comrade Kgalema Motlanthe. Then we'll have self-introduction, what we do in the National Executive Committee, and maybe one can talk with some sense of authority. We do give NEC members a chance to introduce themselves. We did this over the past NECs that one has been serving in. So new NEC members and old returning NEC members, because it's a new collective, will have an opportunity to introduce themselves. So that also is it also allows them to know each other. So the reason why the roll call of the NEC at its very first sitting is read out is to accord members of the National Executive Committee an opportunity to know each other. So that's what we do all the time when we start our very first NEC. You will realize that this is effectively our first formal meeting. We have had, when we had special NEC to deal with January 8, and afterwards there was quite a number of activities, but we are meeting formally for the first time. Today in an induction, tomorrow we'll have a National Executive Committee, tomorrow and Saturday, and then afterwards, Sunday and Monday, we'll then have a Lekgotla, which also prepares for the State of the Nation's address, which will also be guiding the many SOPAs, government Lekgotla, and all of that. And of course, it will be building from what we said during our January 8 statement. Afterwards, we'll have an exercise for NEC members. That will again be done by Comrade Kgalema. And then there will also be exercise 2, which will be done into groups of 10 for NEC members. Again, will be done by Comrade Kgalema. You can see we are quite it's a proper induction. And then from there, we move to ANC organizational structures. It will again be led by the O.R. Tambo School. And then we've got a translation of the 55th National Conference Program of Action. Again, the O.R. Tambo School will carry forward that. And then we'll have the role of the school itself, which will be done by the principal of the school, Comrade David Masondo. And then we'll have a way forward, which will be done by Comrade Secretary General, Comrade Fikile Mbalula, and then closing remarks by the President of the African National Congress. So what we'll arrange is that just on how we're going to run our media program, we'll try and arrange that either before lunch, we'll have to see how the program runs. Before lunch, we bring you in for a photo op. And then after lunch, we're trying to arrange with the SG to see if there will be space for him to do just a sidebar, if that would be possible. So we're trying to make sure that we keep you informed on how the program is unfolding. So you did, Samkele indicated a possible request, so we will put that forward as well, and then we'll come back and give you an update.
A feedback would also to open up the closing session, the closing remarks of the President, if that could be permissible as well.
Yes, we have done so in the past, remember. We have allowed yourselves, even when we met virtually, we did give you an opportunity to cover the closing address of the President. Actually, I would even go further and say, if possible, and I will make that request, that you cover both the way forward and the closing address. So I will make that request to the leadership.
So, Ule, can you just expand on what you said regarding exercise on the program?
Yes.
And then can you just explain why a U.S. delegation, including U.S. Secretary of Treasury Janet Yellen, has just entered the building?
Well, the first explanation on the exercise, remember, we'll be doing quite a number of things on the objectives of we talked about the objectives of the NEC induction. There will be a number of things that Comrade Kgalema would be covering, and those two exercises would actually be coming out of what he will have covered in his induction scope. As it relates to guests that could be here, because they again entered when we were already out here briefing yourselves, I'm sure once we've established all the facts, we'll be able to come and give you an update. But because we are going to try and open the session for yourselves to do a photo op, when the SG, because I did indicate that the SG might also be doing sidebars, I advise that some of those questions, we take them up with the SG during those sidebars.
Mr. Mabe, if you could just clarify, I don't know if you responded to that, about the U.S. delegation in particular, the Secretary, the Treasury Secretary. We know that she's here to meet with our Treasury officials, in particular with our energy crisis. But is this something that often happens, that you have, one particular diplomatic corps actually attending an NEC meeting of the ANC?
Well, this is an NEC induction. It is, well, I would talk about the last two. I would talk about the last two inductions that I had the privilege of attending. When they happened, there was no state official from another country who was here. And I'm referring here to 2012, when I first came into the National Executive Committee, and 2017. So I would not know what would have happened in periods when I was not in the NEC. So it is just a coincidence that the NEC induction happens at a time when there is that kind of a state visit. So when we engage with our Secretary General later on, if he accedes to that kind of a request, I invite you to put that question forward.
Mr. Mabe, the request is, can we be able to get visuals of the Secretary of Treasury of the United States of America, Janet Yellen, with President Cyril Ramaphosa, because there is only one assumption. In the morning, she had an engagement with the Minister of Finance, that is Minister Enoch Godongwana, at the Treasury offices, and thus made her way here, which one would assume the only high-ranking government politician that she would eventually meet with is President Cyril Ramaphosa, because we don't see the Deputy President of the Republic of South Africa here, which is David Mabuza, and the only high-ranking government politician is the President, who is the #1 citizen of the country.
Well, I did indicate that the Secretary General will do a sidebar with yourselves. I think it could be now at this point be prudent that you release me to go back to the NEC induction and then put forward the request that, because you all seem to be having the same request. So I will put forward that request.
On a policy perspective, Mr. Mabe, does this not further fuel allegations that the United States of America has been directing ANC policies, which were allegations that were building up going to your 55th National Conference?
Well, I can tell you now that there is no country that is directing policies of the African National Congress. We don't have that. We convene our policy conferences. We accord our structures an opportunity to input on the policy direction of the African National Congress. Actually, our policy making processes are quite intense. They start from branch level. They discussed all of these policies in their own branch general meeting. Now you can tell me who will influence, which foreign country will influence a branch general meeting of the ANC in what 96 or in what one in Mangaung, really? I mean, we've got more than 4,000 branches. So it's not possible. But of course, the ANC continue to maintain these relations. It's part of cooperation and all of that. When you engage with the SG, if he accedes to that request, you are welcomed to put forward that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pulemabe. That is the ANC spokesperson, Pulemabe, saying that he will now be going back to the ANC's National Executive Committee meeting induction, where he will be putting forth those particular requests of those visuals, which one would assume there's going to be a bilateral meeting between the Secretary of Finance of the United States of America, Janet Yellen, and President Cyril Ramaphosa. Janet Yellen arriving 5 minutes before the arrival of ANC President and President of the Republic of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, who was this morning engaging with the education sector. Also with the Secretary of Finance of the United States of America, Janet Yellen, engaging with the Minister of Finance of South Africa, Enoch Godongwana. Later on during the course of the day, she will be meeting with the South African business delegation and also meeting with the Governor of the Reserve Bank, Lisicha Kganyago, at the offices of the Reserve Bank in Pretoria, and also going to Ford Motor Company.